All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 1 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Thank you all for joining us today. I think some people will continue to trickle in here, but if you're new to this series, welcome. And if you are returning, welcome back. Before we kind of kick off today's topic, we'll just do a couple of housekeeping items beforehand. So first, we'll do a couple of introductions. I'm Kaylee Hansen. I'm a pre-sale and business solutions consultant with SVA Consulting. So I'll be leading us through the majority of today's webinar. And then joining me is Austin, our customer success manager. He'll assist in kind of monitoring any questions that you have as well. So if you do have questions as we go through today's webinar, please feel free to use the chat feature below. Like I said, Austin will start to monitor those. And then if it makes sense to kind of answer them in the moment, we will. Otherwise, we'll have a dedicated Q&A session at the end as well. So with that, I think we can go ahead and just dive right into the webinar. So today's webinar topic is all about Acumatica's expense management. So we'll really look at a couple of different features. We'll highlight some of the OCR technology within Acumatica for those expense receipts as well, and we'll kind of walk through that entire process. So just taking a look at our agenda, we'll first highlight some of the key features and benefits. So we'll take a look at those key features, what we'll plan to highlight today, why those are beneficial to a lot of our customers that are leveraging the tool. Then we'll get into the live demo. So I know that's the most exciting part. We'll see kind of in action. We'll use the mobile device for some of the expense receipt capture. And then we'll get into the desktop for some of the following components as well. And then we'll wrap up just with that Q&A and then any next steps as well. So just taking a look at some of the key features and benefits that we like to highlight just to set the stage for what's to come in the demonstration. So first, we'll explore the native expense management tools. And so really what this allows is really streamlined expense entry for all of your employees, the full native approval workflows, employee reimbursement, as well as credit card recognition. So if we're using corporate credit cards, that's available within Acumatica's expense receipt functionality, as well as personal credit cards, which then we'll walk through that reimbursement workflow as well. So first area that we'll begin to highlight is really the automated expense capture. So what this will allow is for employees to leverage the Acumatica mobile app. So we'll see that in play today to take pictures of those expense receipts. And then Acumatica's AI or OCR technology will start to read and scan that receipt, which automates that entry process for the employee. So again, we'll see that in action today with one of my receipt examples. And then we'll walk through kind of the steps that follow that initial receipt capture. That feeds into a little bit of the approval workflow. So Acumatica has native approval workflows. We've done a couple of webinars before highlighting kind of how complex these can get. We'll highlight that again at a high level today. But really we'll see it in the flow in terms of employees are submitting their expense receipts, they're submitting their expense claims, and then those are routed to people for approval. So again, we can have different logic there, but we'll see that approval workflow come into play on the expense receipt side as well. And with that, we'll highlight some additional features that customers are leveraging, such as the automated notifications for approvals, as well as having delegates on the approvals, as well as the expense side. And then lastly, we'll talk about the full integration with the accounts payable module. So as employees are submitting those expense receipts, leveraging their personal credit cards, that's where kind of that full reimbursement will come into play on the accounts receivable side, or accounts payable side rather. So we'll see that expense claim become that AP bill, and then we can go ahead and pay it, and then it will send out the employee reimbursement that way as well. And then lastly, we'll highlight a bit of the bank feeds feature. So if you're leveraging corporate credit cards within your organization, Acumatica supports that model as well. And then you can leverage the bank feeds feature for kind of that automated bank reconciliation process. So that's a bit of what we'll walk through today. And I'll start by kind of sharing out my mobile app. All right. So we'll go ahead, we'll pivot over to the mobile device.
All right, so what we'll do now is I'll share my screen, and it's just going to be the screen to my phone. And so this will be me as kind of the user or the employee. I think, can you verify too, Austin? You're seeing my phone screen now?
Yep,
Yep.
we're seeing your screen.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. I will go ahead and go into Acumatica. So now I'm in the Acumatica mobile app. I'm signed in as myself, the employee. And so now we'll just show within the mobile app what that expense receipt capture looks like. So if I go to my expense receipts, I can drill down there and just see any previous receipts that I've submitted. So now it's going to go ahead, load these receipts, and this would be kind of any historical receipts or any open receipts that I have within the system. We'll let that load here. So those are any of my previous receipts. Same thing as we've seen within Acumatica. We can start to filter on these different areas in the mobile app as well. So if I just wanted to see, any of my receipts that still need to be claimed, I can go ahead, filter it by that. Anything that's been completed or rejected, maybe it was rejected during that approval process, I could go ahead and filter by that as well. But I'll just go ahead and create a new receipt, and I'll click these this little icon here, and we'll say capture expense receipt. And so what this looks like is it's just opening up my camera on my phone, and I have just a restaurant receipt, a little crimpled up, you'll see, but we should be good to go. And then I can just kind of adjust the sizing here, make it a little easier for them to recognize. Press done, and now it's going to go through this recognition process. So here it's recognizing this receipt. It's going to go through that and read it, and then we'll see how this brings this into the system as well. So you'll see that the description was brought in just from the name of this restaurant in this case. So I'll go ahead, kind of remove this. Maybe I could add something to it as well. So it'll bring in certain areas, and then the user will always have the ability to kind of override or adjust some of these areas as well. So maybe this was just a business dinner with colleagues. And then it brought in the date of that receipt. I'm going to keep it at that date as well. If it was at a different date, or we wanted to track it at a different date, for example, we could. But in this case, that date is always going to match up through that process to the date that's listed on the receipt. Then we get into some of the expense items. So these are items that we set up within the system for users to kind of go ahead and allocate their expenses to. So these are what I have set up within my specific system. You'll see that it automatically added this receipt, just given the type of receipt it was, to a business dinner and lunch for that meals type. If it was a different one or I wanted to kind of allocate it to a different one, I could do so as well. But again, we'll see how it's kind of feeding that based on the engine, based on that type of receipt as well. So we'll keep it at that business dinners and lunch. It's pulling in that amount there. So that's the full amount for that dinner. And then here is where, depending on if you're leveraging corporate credit cards or not, that this would come into play. So in this case, I, as an employee, have access to a credit card or a corporate credit card within the system. So we'll kind of dive back into the desktop version and show you where that's configured as well. So you can have different corporate credit cards that are in the system, and then you can say which employees have access to that. So in this case, I have access to it, so I could go ahead and select it. But I also have the option to say whether or not I paid with a personal account. So in this case, I paid with a personal account. We'll go ahead and walk through that flow. But again, both of those are options in this case. So if I select the personal account, you'll see that corporate credit card, there's no connection there. For anyone leveraging the project accounting module within Acumatica, you can have expenses specific to a project as well as a project task as well. So if you had, project specific expenses, employees could have the ability to go ahead and specify that to a specific project as well as a project task. In this case, I'm going to assume that I'm not leveraging kind of the projects module, and we'll just leave that blank for now. There's a couple of other fields. Again, if you aren't leveraging some of those modules, these fields wouldn't show up within your Acumatica mobile device. And then depending on how you want to leverage the device as well, we can kind of hide some of these fields. So if you don't need, employees to see certain details, oftentimes we'll start to simplify this view for the employees to make that easy for them as well. Then I have some additional details, again, likely an area that we could begin to hide for some of those end users. But this all looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and save it. And then once I save it, we'll see that it's going into my expense receipts list. So here's that one I just created. You'll see the status at the top is open. And then if I select down below, we'll see that that's that file attachment. So you'll see the lovely image of my crumpled up receipt, but there it is attached automatically through that as well. So I can kind of go ahead. This could be routed for approval directly. Otherwise, the workflow I'll start to walk through is, I may have multiple receipts within a given month, for example, and then at the end of the month or at a certain cadence, I'll claim these all together. And so that's what we'll assume is going to get approved in this case. So I could go ahead, go back here. I can filter on anything that needs to be claimed yet. And then in this case, I just have 2 that are open. I'll go ahead and claim them all. And so what this is going to do is it's going to bundle those together into a claim. And so here it's just pulling those together. It's adding those amounts up. I'll give it a better description here. And we'll say, Kaylee Hansen, June receipts, for example. And then if I click on the details below it, we'll see that those receipts fall into the details of the claim itself. And then those associated images will be on those receipts or those details lines. Perfect. So I'll go ahead and save it. And then I'll go back into my expense claims. We'll see that June receipts at the top. And now I'll go ahead and submit it. And so once I submit it, we'll see now the status at the very top has changed to pending approval. And then if I click the bottom below, we'll see who it's routed to approval, or who it's routed for approval rather. So in this case, I have Layla as the approver. And so now it's kind of out of my queue, and we'll go ahead and migrate over to Layla's perspective for some of the approval side, as well as kind of the fulfillment thereafter. All right, so I think I figured out the technical difficulties. So I'm going to switch to my computer now, and then we'll go from there.
And while that's loading, no questions as of yet, so I think we're good on that front.
Perfect. Okay. You guys can see and hear me all right?
Sure can.
Awesome. Thank you guys for bearing with me on some of the device switching. It's sometimes really straightforward and sometimes we run into issues like that. So appreciate the patience there. Okay, perfect. So I just was myself, submitted that expense receipt in the mobile app, and now I'm going to be logged in as Layla as the approver. So I'm going to share my screen now. And now I'm logged into the desktop version as Layla. So you'll see in the top right-hand corner here, Layla is who I'm logged in as, and then we'll go ahead and approve this on her behalf. So in this case, I'm doing it through the desktop. I think we've shown in some other webinars how we can do that approval. The approval is oftentimes an area we'll see people leverage that mobile app as well. So she could very well log in through the mobile app and approve that. But for now, we'll just go to my approvals. And here at the very top, we'll see that June receipts that I just submitted for her. And then I could go ahead and approve it. So I could approve these kind of all at once. Looks like she has some other requests out there. I'll just select this one. I could approve it through this screen, or I could drill down into it as well. Likely that's what they would be doing, is looking at this a little bit closely. And there's the 2 receipts that I submitted, or in this case, Kaylee submitted for Layla to approve. And then each of those have those corresponding images of those receipts. So that was the previous one. And then this one is that one that we were just working with that I had uploaded. So all of that visible to the approver. And then if this looks good, I can go ahead and approve it. I'll also release it at this stage. If something looked off, maybe Layla questioned why there was a $400 business dinner. She wasn't quite sure what that was for. She could reject it as well. And so with the rejections, you can have rejection comments and some reason codes associated with that as well. Awesome. So there's kind of the approval side. Briefly, we'll pop into that approval map. So we've seen these before. This is kind of an area that we've dove into deeper in terms of setting up some of these approval maps within Acumatica. But here is some of what you can start to see in terms of the approval side. So for the expenses specifically, we may have that broken up by department. So in this case, anyone in the sales department, it's likely going to the department head first. And maybe if there's, expense above a certain amount, that might be routed to an additional step as well. So that's where we'll start to see, based on the department, it may go to their department head. We can get granular in terms of those rules as well. But that's just some of the basis for those approval maps. Again, can be pretty dynamic, can be based off of the employee that's submitting it. So that's oftentimes where we'll see that come into play on the expense receipt side. You can take criteria based on who submitted it and then route that to, who they report to in the organization, the department head, based on the department they're in, et cetera. But there's kind of my approval map. And then one last item that I'll just show briefly as well has to do with some of the delegates. So I'll go to my payments payables module. And in this case, once that expense claim was released, now it's creating an AP bill because like we saw, I paid with my personal credit card, or that's kind of what I specified within that receipt itself. So now the company is going to go ahead and reimburse me. So now it falls into my AP workflow. We'll walk through that whole reimbursement process and I'll drill down into this bill as well. So as I do, a couple of things to point out. One, that employee record, myself in this case, is now extended as the vendor in this workflow. So I'm now the vendor. I'm going to be expected to get paid back from the organization. And then it's creating the AP bill. And if I drill down just into this record, this is going to pop open my employee record. A couple of different areas to point out within here. In the financial tab of this specific employee, we'll see that preferred payment method. We'll see just some mock data in here as well, but that's where you'll start to specify their payment method for things like the reimbursement. And then the other area is this delegates spot. So we've seen this come into play before on some of the approval side. Delegates can also come into play on the expense receipt and the expense claim side. So if there's areas or individuals within the organization who, maybe would have someone submitting the expense receipts on their behalf, that's where you can designate this specific delegate. So in this case, maybe a little counterintuitive here, but Layla is set up as also a delegate. So she could go in on my behalf and submit those expense receipts and submit those expense claims. My name or my employee record will still kind of be attached to it. So we know that those are my expenses. But in this case, I have her as someone who can create those on my behalf. If it was for a short period of time, so maybe, there was a month that I needed some assistance on, I could have a start date and an end date as well. And then it'll only allow her to create those on my behalf during that start period. And if I just add kind of another one here, like I talked about before, we have those all also on the approval side. So maybe Layla's supposed to be approving, she's out on vacation. So maybe someone like Austin comes in and approves on her behalf. So Austin would have her, Layla would have Austin rather as the delegate in this sense. So a couple of different areas in the system that we can set up those delegates. All right, perfect. So I'll go ahead and just walk through the rest of this AP workflow. So here's my bill that was created again automatically when I released that expense claim. I can kind of batch pay this. I'm just going to go ahead, pay it directly through this screen. And then we'll see it's automatically creating this payment record. And then that payment method, the ACH, which was set as the preferred payment method on my employee record, is now pulling in there as well. So I'm going to go ahead, continue to process this through. All of these steps that I'm walking through can kind of be processed in bulk and or run on a schedule. So this processing screen is kind of what's pulling this in. But if I wanted to process, all of these payments at the end of the month, for example, that's where I can do so through these processing screens within Acumatica. And that would be consistent across any reimbursements to employees, as well as just AP bills in general. So in this case, we're just paying this single one, so we'll go ahead and process it. So this is going to process my payment first. And now it's going to go ahead, create this ACH batch, and I'm going to export this. And really what this is doing is it's creating that notcha file on the ACH side. And so you'll see as I kind of proceeded through that process, that's what that file will look like. That's what then gets sent to your bank. And then I can release this as well. So kind of that full flow, both from the expense entry side to the approval side, all the way through the employee reimbursement side, all of that directly within Acumatica. Acumatica will also manage the remittance notifications to employees to let them know that they will be paid as well. And it looks like we might have a question in the chat.
We do indeed. So this question is, can the AP bill be kept on hold or balance? Sometimes the accounts are not obvious, like a restaurant expense may not be a meal. It could be an event, for example. This is reviewed in this use case by our payables department. So
Yeah.
I guess what kind of flexibility is there around that?
Yep, it can definitely come in as on hold. So we saw that's what it did come in as. I had to go ahead, release that, and then create the payment from it. So the AP bill can definitely be kept on hold. And then if you did want an additional approval on the AP bill itself after the expense claim was already approved, you could have that on the AP bill as well. All right. So that's kind of the flow in terms of that personal credit card being leveraged, the payment going out to that employee as well. And so now I'll briefly highlight a bit of the corporate credit card functionality. So if I go into my banking module, this is where I'm maintaining all of my corporate credit cards. So in this case, I have 2 different credit cards that employees can use within the organization. So this corporate Visa for executives, for example, if I drill down into it, we'll see things like basic information, what is the card number, what's that cash account associated with it. But really the main area here is this is where I can start to say, okay, which employees have access to which cards? So maybe you have a corporate card for each employee. So then it's just a one-to-one basis there. You can also have corporate credit cards that multiple different employees have access to. And so this is where I have that set up as well. So why that corporate Visa showed up as an option on my expense receipt specifically is because I have that availability here. I applied that to Kaylee to leverage moving forward. So Michael Andrews, Maxwell Baker, and myself could use that corporate credit card, for example. So that's kind of the first component. And then once you have that set up, the bank feeds feature of Acumatica can help with kind of the corporate credit card bank reconciliation aspect as well. So a couple of things here. We've highlighted this bank feeds feature before. So with the bank feeds feature, you have the ability to kind of directly connect to your bank to pull open any bank transactions and then match those to payments within the system. There's also the ability to leverage this specifically on the expense side. So in this case, I'm leveraging this SFTP site for pulling in these bank transactions. And so what this looks like is here I have, this corporate credit card set up. as under the cash accounts, and then specific corporate credit cards for, what I want to pull into the system. So anything or any transactions that hit this corporate credit card, that's what I'm going to pull in, and that's what I'm going to reconcile against. With bringing this in, a couple of different things I'll point out. First is this create expense receipts button. So if this is checked, this is now, once we pull in those bank transactions, it's automatically going to attempt to create these expense receipts for you. So that's kind of the first aspect. And then once those expense receipts are created, this is where we can start to set rules to say, okay, if the description, for example, of that bank transaction contains the word flight, then code that to the expense item travel. Same thing goes for something like a hotel. So if you're constantly flying on Delta, for example, maybe anytime that transaction description within the bank contains Delta, then you're going to expense that to the travel item. So it helps a bit in terms of just mapping that once that's created within the system. So the use case here would be a little bit different. Instead of having first the employees go in and create the expense receipts on their own, this would kind of leverage the bank transaction to automatically create the receipts and then send something like a notification to the employee to review those receipts, maybe upload the image of the receipt itself, and then it can go through that entire process as well. So in this case, that's what this would do. It's going to import in any of those transactions, automatically create the corresponding expense receipts, and then based on who that employee is, because of which cards they have access to in this sense, it may give them an email notification, a push notification, a text message to say, hey, an expense receipt has been created on your behalf. Go in and review it and upload an image, for example. So if I just go into my import bank transactions screen, I'll go to process transactions. What this would do is essentially have all of those transactions from the bank, and then it would automatically create those expense receipts for the employee. Again, typically we would leverage something like a push notification where they can then go into the mobile app, upload that image, and then submit that for approval. So kind of a newer feature within the bank reconciliation module within Acumatica specifically, but just one more kind of item that we can leverage to help employees kind of push them to submit their expenses a little bit more as well. So with that, I'm going to transition over here. We'll reshare this. Switch up these settings here. Awesome. Okay, so I know that was a little bit quicker than our typical webinars, but pretty exciting stuff in terms of the expense receipt side. So ability to leverage both the corporate credit cards, personal credit cards, and then that full reimbursement process, as well as the approval process will kind of come along for the ride. And then that bank reconciliation feature, a little bit newer within Acumatica, but again, allowing you to auto create those expense receipts and then send notifications to your employees to then maybe add the image or verify that everything looks good before they submit it as well. So again, two different tools in terms of trying to make that expense process a little bit easier, because as we all know, it can get a little tedious within the organization as well. But just wrapping up some of the last couple of slides here. If you liked what you saw today and you're interested in potentially moving the expense module into Acumatica, Austin, myself, and our team would be happy to assist you in that process. So feel free to reach out to either one of us directly or reach out to us through those emails as well, and we can kind of route you to the correct people on our team to assist. We will have a next webinar in July. So July 23rd at 11 a.m. is where that's targeted to. We'll all send out invites on that topic here shortly as well. And then lastly, we've alluded to the fact that there's some other webinars out there. So if you're interested in leveraging or viewing any of those webinars, feel free to visit our YouTube. And so if you go to YouTube under SVA Consulting, there is a whole playlist on our Acumatica webinars. So those dive deeper into those topics like the automated notifications, the approval workflow, all of those types of things. So definitely encourage you guys to check that out. And then lastly, we always put that link to the Acumatica community. So that's a good platform to just view what other people are doing, kind of play around with it, see any new updates that come from Acumatica as well, any exciting news, as well as sharing your guys' ideas. So just a couple of resources that we like to send your guys' way as well. I knew we had a chat come in previously. It looks like we answered that. Any other questions in the chat, or anyone else have last questions that they want to drop in the last couple of minutes left? Doesn't look like it.
And I do want to reiterate a point that Kaylee just made in terms of engaging with the community. We do encourage you as well to submit feedback in terms of the content that you see here as part of these webinars. We want to make sure that the content that you see here is relevant to you. And so looking at that library of historic webinars is a great place to start. But if you're not seeing something there and you think it would benefit you and potentially others, feel free to drop a line using that contact information that Kaylee referenced here on this slide. And we're happy to take that into consideration for content for future webinars.
Well, no other questions. Thank you guys for joining today, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you all.